Okay, whew, that was exciting. Our scatter, I do want to do a couple things. Our scatter, this guy, I'd like to colorize everyone that uses a parameter. Always try to anyway. Our scatter guy, we want that number of points to be a parameter, obviously, because the number of points you use, I think, is pretty important. I would even say the global seed's a thing, so they have different seeds for different guys and so forth. But let's at least get the main stuff up there. So I'm going down again to type properties. I'm grabbing from nodes inside of our image breaker. We got our scatter guy. Why does it do that? That's weird. Our scatter guy, and one of our options is the yeesh. Was it force total count? You guys remember? I think it was force total count. Let's find out. Hit apply, hit accept. Sorry. Let's take a look. Oh, no, I'm not sorry at all. That's exactly the number we want. However, 100,000 is a better, uh, oh, I'm sorry, the number of points is going to be it. Sorry. Whether or not we force the total count, I actually am going to leave that as a parameter because, yeah, that might be useful. But I'm going to say we need to say the number of points too. Kind of one of those happy accidents there. Aside from the total count, the force total count, we also want to say the number of points. So on top of that, bunk. This is going to be, let's give these better names. So this is going to be, how would you phrase this? The number of points that we're using to do the, actually let's call this scatter points. It's basically, and the reason we care about this, depending on how high res your image is, that's what's going to decide how many points you want. In other words, this is the number, actually you can call it that. So we'll call it the number of cut points is what this really is. Okay? And let's go ahead and make a, what was I going to do? Make a folder for this, because this is basically the first thing we're going to mess with, which is things about the cut points, meaning how many we have, whether we do it by density or whether we do it by stuff. So whether or not we force total count, whether we do the number of the cut points, we're also going to have a couple of things like whether or not we make it flat and so forth. So I do want to make sure the default stays around 100,000. Great. So obviously, you know, if you went to dunk dunk, very few. If your image was super low res or something, you might do that. You might get away with that. Personally, I think 100,000 is at least that. We probably need to do, if we had really tiny guys, you know, depending on the image, we might need, you know, if it was tinier, we might need like 200,000 and so forth, blah, blah, blah. These are our cut points. However, they're all there, and we don't want all of them. We just want to kill some of them. So who do we want to get rid of? We want to first give, we could just say everybody whose red is over a certain value, which is a little cheap to do. So let's actually use brightness. And I'm sure you guys are all familiar with this formula, but brightness is in like hue, saturation, value, brightness is just a combination of red, green, and blue. Brightness, sorry. Brightness, and it is the magic numbers, which I'm sure you're all familiar with as well, and I used to memorize these and probably still have. Something like 0.299 times the red, which is CR, plus point, I think it's like 587 times the green, and then whatever is left, which is like 114 of the blue, and that's basically brightness. And what I'm going to say is we're going to say if the brightness is below a certain threshold, we're going to delete guys. What threshold is that going to be? That's where we need, and I'm going to put it here as you can see. What I did, I'll do this again. The basically we were like this. Okay, so we were like, well, we want a threshold. It's part of this cut points thing. So we're actually going to go, I'm going down to type properties, and we're going to make from scratch float and in cut points add a new guy that we're going to put here, and we're going to call him brightness threshold. Or actually bright threshold, I think was the word I wanted to go with so we could see it all in one line. If you make it brightness threshold, I think it's too long for Houdini. And then it's like default will be like 0.05. So we're going to say that anybody who's greater than 0.05 is we're going to cut off. And the reason we're making this a parameter is because on some images we might want to change that. Like in this case, we see how those gray guys may want to get rid of them, maybe we don't want to, depending on how things go. And we're going to meet, that's what we want to have as an option. So let's go to expression. We're going to delete non-selected points. And I'm just going to right click relative reference so that I can then say if $ brightness is greater than that amount, I'm sorry, that value, then it's a 1, otherwise it's a 0. So glunk. So as you can see, we go from that to that. So that gives our actual points. Now these are our cut points. They're not necessarily our final cut points. They're kind of our initial cut points, and I'll tell you why they're not final is because, remember I said I was going to have guys I show, I'm going to make them green. This is another guy we want to actually see. I'm going to hit this. Let's go up and in our image breaker, in our, whoops, sorry, so he's doing that. I'm going to go down to type properties, and we're going to add a new guy to our little menu now, which is we now have an actual set of cut points. So the thing I was going to talk about in a second, and this is where we're going to get all artistic for a second, is remember I said, why didn't we just, scatter some guys in the front and project them back? Now we can say, I want to see the wall texture, I want to see the cut texture, I want to see the cut points. Okay, why? And I'll tell you why. If we just grabbed those guys in the front and projected them back and used that to chop it up, sure, it'd work. But it would look like a computer did it, especially later on. We're going to take a subset of these guys. We're going to use that subset of points to chop up with Voronoi, much as they normally hate Voronoi, to chop up the mortar into tiny little mortar bits. And because they aren't exactly in the front, some are in the sides, some are next to each other, you get these kind of organic, neat shapes. It'll look less like a, laser cut something, and more like somebody actually built it and is destroying it. So that's why we actually will 2Dify these, or have the option to flatten these when I say 2Dify for making the mortar. But when we chop the mortar to bits, we actually do want to have these kind of inaccurate, not perfect things. That's the kind of stuff I really like. Okay, come back for the next lesson, and we're going to start cutting things up and actually making the actual objects.